BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here.
And the Los Angeles Dodgers just finished off a 8-game road trip, salvaging any piece of, confidence for the team, walking away out of Oakland, winning 2 of the 3 games there after dropping a series in San Diego and Houston the series before. There's a lot to be positive about, leaving Oakland with the Series W. There are some things, that are still going wrong with the club, whether it's offensively or just some pitching, situations where they're, fortunately for today, they got out of some jams. Jack Flaherty, who made his Dodger debut, got out of some jams and got out of some trouble as well. But they get ready to head back home for a short 6-game homestand against two Pennsylvania teams in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, who are both going to come back to Los Angeles. But before we get on to that, we're going to recap the past week. And joining me again is Steve Webb from DodgersBeat.com. Steve, it's good to have you on. Obviously, the Dodgers are taking any sort of, anything away from this Oakland series. But before we get into that, we didn't have the chance to talk to you directly on the live, but the Padres series was a very hot topic. And, I feel like each of us that talked, whether it was Juan, myself, Roger, or Carlos, we each kind of had similar opinions on it, but I'm interested in to see your opinion on how that series transpired. It was only 2 games. Dodgers were swept out of San Diego. It seems like it's a place that they struggled with, for pretty much this entire season, and not only in San Diego, but just against the Padres. So what are your thoughts on that short 2-game series before we, start delving into the Oakland A's series?
Well, I didn't care for it, to be honest. It was not my favorite series of the year. That first game was just a knife in the heart, man. That was just not good. If you have a lead like they had, and you should lock that game down, and they had everybody in position to do that, but they just couldn't. They just couldn't seal the deal. And the second game with Kershaw, I mean, that's in certain ways a little more troubling, because Kershaw is a guy that we don't want to depend on him, but we'd like him, right? And it was such a step back from his first outing that you wonder, well, okay, what are we going to actually get out of this guy? Do we have any faith that we're going to get quality starts the rest of the way, or is he just somebody who's holding on too long and should have never come back in the first place? I think the jury is still out, because, like we talked about in our last meeting, he's the kind of guy who doesn't like to do rehab starts. He doesn't like to go to Oklahoma City. He doesn't like to go to Rancho Cucamonga. So essentially, he's doing spring training on the fly, right?
Yeah.
So I'm withholding judgment for a while. I'd like to see another 4 or 5 starts under him before we can make a decision on whether he's going to be useful to the team going forward. But that was not good news. I was hoping for a step forward, and it was a step way back.
Yeah, I think I made my opinion known. It's like what you said. I feel like Kershaw should still technically be building up. He only had 10 innings in the minor leagues before, he made his debut this season, which for a guy that at his age that underwent his first major surgery of his career, and it's a shoulder injury as well, you feel like maybe he should have had some more time. I mean, look at what they did with Walker Buehler. I know that's Tommy John, so it's a little bit more severe of an injury, but it felt like Buehler was in there for almost, majority of like a quarter of the season before he was recalled. And Kershaw, I know you mentioned it. I know we've mentioned it on the show before, and we've written about it as well. And it's like, do you want the Dodgers to depend on Kershaw? I feel like most fans would say no, but we would like for him to be at least serviceable, which the Dodgers, before they start getting, healthier, if that ever happens, they need guys to pitch innings, and they need Kershaw. They kind of just throw him in there. They say, hey, you're a dependable starter. We need you to give us some innings, but it just hasn't really worked. The Giants game, it was nice because, it was good for him to get a start, get a couple strikeouts in that game, go for, solid innings, only allowing 2 runs. But, I said on the live, the Giants offensively are not that good, and the Padres, they are a good offense, and they were in a, stadium versing a team that they play really, well against. They live up to play the Dodgers, and I just feel like Kershaw, just met the Padres at the wrong time. They're playing really well, and I don't think much fooled him, because I think Kershaw can get away with diminished velocity. We've seen it year after year. It's slowly gone down. I just didn't see any of his off-speed pitches being sharp, and it just looked like he was very predictable. The defense didn't help him out. So I'm in the same boat as you. It's a little concerning, but I want to see like at least 2 or 3 more starts, and we'll get to see him, go up against another good National League team in the Phillies.
Tuesday starting against the Phillies, so that'll be a good test. I mean, hopefully the Phillies will continue to do their scuffling that we'll talk about more later, I'm sure. But luckily they're facing a diminished Phillies lineup.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, because the last time, the Dodgers played the Phillies, it was a complete, similar situation leading up, 2 of the top National League teams. But like you said, we'll get into that a little bit later. What I do want to get into before we even delve even further into the Oakland A's series, you wrote a piece the other day, obviously it's well known around baseball that the Oakland A's are leaving, Oakland, where they're going to be playing in the next couple years. They're going to be, for the time being, playing in Sacramento while their potential stadium gets built in, I believe it's Las Vegas, but that hasn't even been, officially finalized at all. So they're kind of in a little bit of a purgatory mode. But Oakland Coliseum, we had, Adrian, he covered the game yesterday for the Bleed Lows podcast, giving us our pregame, postgame coverage. It was his first time at the stadium. And then Carlos, he also went there this past weekend as well. You wrote a piece on Dodgers Beat, kind of going over the history, especially the Dodgers, history there. That's where they won and clinched the World Series championship. Why don't you go over that article between both of these 2 clubs and how they're connected with the stadium?
Well, I was focused mostly on '88, which is such a feel-good story. But we should also mention that they were head-to-head in the '74 World Series as well. And that one didn't go as well for the Dodgers, because that was when the swinging A's were their swinginest, right? It was I think, was it the third of their 3 in a row, or was it the middle one of their 3 in a row? But it was not a great series for the Dodgers. Let me see here. Let me get this up real fast. Let's see. So in '74, let's see. It was, the A's won in 5 games. That was their last of the 3 in a row. So they won 72, 73, 74. And I mean, other than the Yankees of the '90s, that was probably the biggest dynasty of our lifetime. Well, we have the Big Red Machine in the '70s, the A's in the '70s, and the Yankees in the '90s. Now the Dodgers should be a dynasty, but they just can't seem to seal the deal. So the 74 series didn't go great for the Dodgers, but that 88 series, and everybody, I mean, it's practically iconic by now. The Kirk Gibson home run, the Oral Hershiser scoring scoreless inning streak, the kind of way Hershiser kind of just basically put the team on his back, a very undermanned team. They were sending out Mickey Hatcher and God knows who else was out there on the team. It was like Steve Sachs was on that team, but it was just such, and there's the famous story about how Bob Costas said that this is probably the worst team that's ever been fielded on a World Series field, or the worst hitting team that's ever been fielded. Of course, pitching, they were a different story, but because they just didn't have much there, especially with Gibson out of the lineup. And I remember I was watching that game. I was at Marina Del Rey, sitting in my friend's apartment, and the A's had Eckersley out on the mound, and the Dodgers were down by a run, and they had 2 outs, and I was like, "Oh, this thing's over." And then here comes Gibson out of the dugout. It has to be top 10 moments in sports history. That because it's just so utterly ridiculous that it even happened, and. But I guess it's a tribute to a scouting report because Kirk Gibson remembered in the back of his head he was going to get a back foot slider on a full count, and he got one and ripped it into the right field pavilion. So and the improbability of the whole thing, beating the Mets in the NLCS and then beating. I mean, these were 200 win teams they beat, but back and it's somewhat instructive for the current Dodgers because what that 88 team had was grit, and a lot of people have said that these latest version of the Dodgers lack that grit, lack that fighting spirit, and it's not that they don't care. It's just that there's a certain kind of player that Andrew Friedman likes, and that player is not a hard-nosed Kirk Gibson kind of player.
Yeah,
and it's interesting to compare that 88 team, which was not a great team in the regular season, whether I think they had 94 wins, and compares our 111 win team and our 106 win team and our 105 win team from the last few years that didn't get the job done. It's striking the difference between the two, and because you could have seen the Dodgers just roll over in that first game, and but Lasorda, playing a riverboat gambler, sent up Gibson to that final at bat, and the rest is history, as they say. But and the final out, of course, happened right there in Oakland, right there on the mound that we just got off of. I went to the Oakland Coliseum for the first time this year. I went over 4th of July. I went to see a game there. And it is a bit of a dump, and it's not. I've heard horror stories about the press box, which I did not get into, but I just went as a fan that time, but I had a great time, and boy, I mean, the Dodger fans who went got the best seats in the house, I'm sure, because I think they had like 35,000 on Saturday. It was something like that. Which is, if the Oakland attendance, 35,000 is like, I think 25,000 of them were fans. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Like, I feel bad, for the Oakland, to lose, a lot of their sports franchises, Golden State, the Warriors, they leave. The A's are now, the next team to leave, but they're not even just leaving, potentially the city. They're also leaving potentially the state if they go to, to
Right.
Vegas. So, such a historic franchise. You wrote about it with the '88 World Series. These two teams kind of being intertwined, in baseball history, and yeah, it's looking at the TV. What do the A's really even need to go to games for? What is the purpose for the A's themselves to even take care of a stadium that they know they're going to
Well,
be leaving?
and the thing is, it's not that long ago that the A's were a very good team.
Yeah,
When they
it's
had Matt Chapman and Matt Olson and Marcus Simeon, I mean, and they had some good pitching, and this was a good ball club. And of course, we had the Moneyball days and all of that, but it's just, and to be honest, they're not playing that bad right now.
no.
I mean, last year was a disaster, but this year it's like reasonably decent baseball they're putting up.
Yeah, and they have a lot of to build off. Everybody expected the A's to kind of just sell off everybody that under the sun. Brent Rooker, Mason Miller, just to name the two big names, and they ended up opting to keep both of them, which I think at the end of the day, if you're a front office executive in the A's, you want to have something to build off of, and if you think you can build off of that with Mason Miller and then Brent Rooker, leading the way offensively, all you have to really do now in the league is just shoot for 85 wins, and you're probably getting into that third wild card, regardless of what league you're in. So,
Pretty close.
but yeah, I've heard, when I've talked to some of the fellow beat writers when I've covered the team here on the East Coast, when they bring up, hey, what's your favorite stadium, to cover the team at, what's your favorite press box? Oakland was bottom of the barrel on that, which I could understand just because, you look at the stadium on TV, it just doesn't look like a modern, up-to-date stadium, and it's just run down because the team, they just don't care anymore. It's the last season of the stadium.
Yeah, Stephen Nelson on their broadcast today made a good point. It's like Oakland Stadium is not as old as Dodger Stadium.
Yeah,
and Dodger Stadium, they really have made a lot of effort to improve the fan experience and to make going to a ball game interesting and new and exciting. And they have the whole plaza that they just redid, and they got the new statues up, and they still haven't done anything about the parking, but that's another story. Maybe that gondola will come and save the day. That stadium is beautiful. You go to a Dodger Stadium, and it's a great experience. You go to Oakland, and it's like a dump. It is what it is, and it's a sad thing because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Thankfully, the A's are probably happy for the free money, with the Dodgers playing there. So they probably got a huge boost in attendance for these 3 games. And for good reason. The Dodgers, thankfully, they treated their fans to both Oakland and Dodger fans that made the travel up to Oakland memorable because, Jack Flaherty made his his Dodgers debut, and the Dodgers ended up, taking 2 out of 3 games, this series as well. Much needed 2 out of 3 games because, let's get straight into it. They drop a series in San Diego, which we already touched on, and then they dropped a frustrating series in Houston where, at least in that series, you thought they could have at least taken 2 out of 3. San Diego, bullpen management or bullpen arms do their job. You're looking at potentially a split instead of a 2-game series sweep. Oakland, I feel like they had to go in and, get 2 out of 3 wins, potentially, hopefully sweep. And then that first game, they ended up dropping that first game, and it's like, are they going to really lose the series to the A's? I know the A's have been playing really well, since the All-Star break. I think around like 9 wins before the head-to-head today or this weekend. So, it's not like they were facing a bad team per se, but it's a team that they should beat just because you look at their record, you look at the pitchers they were going up against. And, Gavin Stone, I don't know if he's running out of fumes. I don't know if it's, his arms just starting to feel, the burden of a 162-game season, because I think this is like the 4th time or 5th time in 6 starts that he's given up 4 more runs, which if you looked at him, in June, he was pretty much almost unhittable, and he was
Yeah,
going deep into games.
I think I wrote in my recap piece that his ERA since July 1st is like north of 7, which is, that's not going to cut it. So, in June, you sort of said, well, we don't have Yamamoto, we don't have Kershaw yet. Bueller's struggling, but look at what Gavin Stone is doing. Oh my goodness, we've got lightning in a bottle here, and then the illusion is starting to wear off. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they're. It just seems like he's not placing his pitches as well as he used to. He's not getting his strong command that he wants, and it's just not showing in the results.
Yeah, and I agree with that because if you watch his starts, a key indicator if a guy's tired is if just their velocity dips. I think his velocity's been the same, this entire month, and he's not really a power pitcher regardless. He hovers around that, like that 94, 95 mile per hour mark. Occasionally, depending on, I guess, how much intensity he's throwing with, he could reach up to 96, 97, but that's not the norm for him.
Yeah, once or twice a game.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just a funk. Pitchers go the ebbs and flows of the game. You have hot and cold streaks. Maybe Gavin's just having a little bit of a cold streak right now, and hopefully, that gets corrected, in these next 2 months because, you're looking at the schedule. We're already in August, and then September will be here before you know it. And then by that time, you're trying to retool and just get ready for the postseason.
Yeah, I think after today, there's 50 games left. So, you're looking
crunching.
at 8-10 starts for each of these guys. That's not a ton. So they really need to get things going.
Yeah, and with the rotation being in the stats that it is in terms of injuries and guys coming back, a guy made his debut, a guy who the Dodgers traded for, and that was Jack Flaherty. And I think despite it looked like him getting in trouble a couple of those times, he ended up pitching 6 scoreless innings. So what did you see from Flaherty? Was there anything, particularly that you had your eye on, or what did you just even think of his first start in Dodger Blue just altogether?
Well, I'm sure there was some nerves starting with a new team, especially it's a team that he grew up rooting for. I don't want to talk like he pitched poorly because he didn't. But he didn't pitch as good as he had the last 3 or 4 starts in Detroit. I think the last 3 or 4 starts in Detroit, he was averaging like 3 hits a game or something like that.
And 2 of them were against Cleveland, which technically they have the best record in baseball right now.
Right. So he didn't quite, he didn't blow the doors off the place, but he pitched well, and he showed that he has the strength of character and strength of mind to get out of jams, because what was he in the 6th? It was bases loaded, nobody out, right? And he got out. Yep. Fielder's choice ground out. He struck out a guy and then got a ground out again to end the inning. So,
yep.
I mean, that's no picnic getting out of that jam. I mean, he got into it, which is, but I mean, he didn't walk a lot of guys. He went 99 pitches, which is a little much for as many innings as he did, but. So we'd like to see him a little more efficient next time out, but I think that will come. I'm sure he was, sort of getting used to new circumstances, new pitching coach, new everything. So given those situations, you got to think, hopefully we're on to a good thing. The Flaherty thing came right at the end of the trade deadline, and before that, I was thinking, this trade deadline is not going great for us.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think Flaherty, to be honest, since Skubal didn't get moved and Eovaldi didn't get moved and all these kind of, wish list pitchers kind of stayed put. Snell didn't get moved. So he was the best starter out there. And, Crochet, of course, with his demands, didn't get moved. So you got to think that the Dodgers, really came up lucky. Now I'm a little concerned about this report about back trouble and how the Yankees backed out, and I don't know if you went over that on the live or not, but the reports of the last couple of days are that the Yankees were like within a whisker of signing Flaherty and making a trade for him, and they saw some medicals that scared him away.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit. A half of me believes it was probably just somebody in the Yankees camp just putting the information out there just to kind of save face, just because they didn't get all of their needs to appease their fan base. I don't know. I think if he got the shots or whatever he got done to his back at the beginning of July, and then like you said, he had like his last 3 or 4 starts in July. He looks really efficient. He said he feels healthy. I look at it as the Dodgers. If he is good enough to get through this regular season and the postseason, that's all you need, because I don't imagine, unless some insane run of him, forcing his way to be in the Dodgers offseason plans to be re-signed by the club, I don't really see it. So I think the Dodgers should just be using Flaherty as a workhorse. Obviously just get him healthy until October, but once like late September and October hit, just pitch this guy. Just get him out there, use all of his baseball that you can use while you have him, and then once free agency hits at the end of the season, let him, have him play into a bigger contract, which is why he took that 1-year prove-it deal with Detroit.
Right. I mean, this is a win-win for both sides, right?
Yeah.
Because with Ohtani and potentially Sasaki for next year.
Yep.
You're gonna look at Jack Flaherty doesn't really fit into the future plans for the Dodgers. If he pitches his way onto the team for next year, good for him. But I feel like this is sort of like a Max Scherzer kind of a deal, and hopefully it doesn't end like Max Scherzer. That we'll get what we can out of him, and we don't really have any expectation of signing him after it's done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the Dodgers agree with that method as well, just because you already mentioned Ohtani returning to the rotation next year. Sasaki has been heavily rumored to join the Dodgers next year. And then, you have Kershaw as a player option. You have Glass now under control. You have Gavin Stone. You have Bobby Miller under control. There's just so many arms. I just feel like Jack Flaherty doesn't fit into their equation post 2024, but 2024 right now, the Dodgers absolutely need him. And from what I saw, I thought he looked okay. It wasn't overpowering. He's not a power pitcher. He can reach around, like 94, 93 miles per hour. His curveball looked great. He got a lot of swings and misses on that. He had a couple walks. He gave up a lot of weak hits, especially in those first, 3 innings. He got into trouble, but he got out of trouble. He ended up still pitching 6 scoreless innings, despite giving up a handful of hits and having a handful of walks. He's just going to build off of it. This trade is similar to when
6 scoreless innings is not nothing for the Dodgers lately, right?
That's probably the best stat line that they've had in probably almost a month or two, especially how everything is gone.
Yeah.
But
and thank the Lord for River Ryan. I mean, he came within a whisker of getting his second win on this road trip. But.
Yeah. River Ryan pitched really well to close out this series in the rubber match today. Interesting stat, it's the Dodgers' first road series win since June 24th to the 26th, which kind of makes sense because I feel like the Dodgers, they haven't been playing too well in the month of July, and they definitely have not been playing too well on the road. Especially, I vividly still remember that road trip to close out the first half before the All-Star break. So it's good for the Dodgers to break some streaks there. A lot of injury updates over the past week. We got updates on Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, newly, utility man Tommy Edman, who's about to go on another rehab assignment. Max Muncy, he saw the chiropractor. We talked about this on the live. It sounds like he's turning a new page, and the Dodgers still fully expect him to return at some point this season. The big news, however, is Mookie Betts, where he is eyeing a August 12th or 13th return. How big is it that Mookie Betts is about to rejoin this club at just, I would just say, the perfect time when they need him the most?
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like, thank the Lord that Freddie Freeman's son
Yep.
is feeling better, and maybe at some point during the Philadelphia series, Freddie will be back. I mean, obviously, it was a bummer of a road trip, but when you don't have Mookie Betts, you don't have Freddie Freeman. You know, uh, 3 wins is not so horrible, I guess. We went with 3-5 on the, so we're 3-5 without Freddie,
Yeah.
and but yeah, and of course, Shohei Ohtani and Will Smith are not really contributing as they were used to seeing them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, I consider ourselves almost lucky to get those 3 wins on this road trip.
Yeah, it has been a struggle on offense. It has been a struggle for the team. And, Roger has been preaching this notion for the past couple of weeks where the dominoes are just about to fall in place. The Dodgers, their deadline, while it was underwhelming until they made the Flaherty move, they kind of got a lot of, role players to kind of fill out their bench. And now you're starting to see there's going to be a wave of them getting starters back. They're going to get Freddie Freeman back. They're going to get Mookie Betts back. And they hope, which it sounds like he is going to come back, and that's Max Muncy. That's 3 starters that have missed, 2 of them have missed the majority of the season. And you put them into this Dodger lineup with a better bench bats, in my opinion, with Rosario, with
Right.
Kevin
Yeah.
Kiermaier.
You'll see some people getting DFA'd pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, the outlook of this roster is definitely going to be changing in the next couple weeks, couple days, especially we just talked about the position player market. We're about to get pitchers back. Walker Buehler, Dave Roberts said he's only going to make one more, start in AAA, and then he's going to get another crack at the rotation. So that's another guy that's going to be called up that they're going to have to make a move for. Bobby Miller, I'm kind of not expecting him to return this year. He had another setback with an injury in AAA OKC, so I assume he's done for pretty much the year.
Yeah, I
Bruce
wouldn't rush
Gratterall,
him.
he's coming back. Ryan
Gratterall,
Brazier is getting ready to come back.
Yeah,
And Michael Grove is going to be the first of that group to come back, according to Dave Roberts. So things are
you're
trending
going to
in the
have
right direction.
half a dozen roster changes in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and keep in mind, rosters do expand in September, but it's not like how it was a couple years ago where,
Right.
You can use the luxury of the entire 40-man roster. Now it's you get one roster spot, one extra spot. Pick who you're choosing to take that spot as an extra arm or an extra bat, to slot on your bench. And then, it was reported today that, Dalton Rushing is getting the call up to AAA. He's been playing a lot of games in left field. I kind of I've been putting it out in our off, air group chat. I said, all right, we tried Vargas out there. When are we going to start trying Rushing out there? Because he's had a really good season offensively in the minor leagues this year. So could he be a potential viable September call-up? I think all this news just shows that the Dodgers are finally starting to get healthy at the right time. And they're going to start playing baseball. They're going to start getting better. They're facing a Phillies team that's going to be that has struggled this entire month of July. Looking at since July, I think over the last 30 games, the Phillies are 12-18. They are kind of reeling right now, and in terms of the standings in the National League, they only have a game and a half above the Dodgers, despite the Dodgers having.
The Dodgers could walk out of that series with the best record in the National League.
Yeah, and me living on the East Coast, I know a lot of Phillies fans. I tend to, when I talk about all of the stuff, the Dodgers have so much stuff happen to them this year, whether it's off the field, medical stuff with their family, like what happened with Freddie Freeman missing a couple of games, Mookie Betts getting a freak injury, Max Muncy getting an oblique injury. You're talking about Yamamoto also getting hurt. You're talking about a lot of guys that, the Dodgers, put a lot of money into and invested into, especially for the season, being out a huge bulk of the season, and they're still only a game and a half out of the top, seed in the National League, which I don't know if that's saying the National League's extremely weak this year. It is the first season I've read since 2014 that there's not a single team in terms of the MLB that's on pace to win 100 games, which is kind of weird because, we're used to seeing the Dodgers win 100 games year in and year out. But I just think the National League's wide open.
It's interesting that I saw a statistic a couple of days ago that on August 1st, compared to last year, you'd think with what's gone on with the Dodgers in the last month or two, that the Dodgers must be way off the pace of last year.
Yeah.
In fact, they're playing better than they were last year at this time. They have one more win than they had last year at this time, same number of games. And what happened last year was, if you remember, the Dodgers just tore it up in August of last year. They won like 20 games in August. And I don't, you can't depend on that happening. But it was interesting that the Dodgers, who won 100 games last year, are actually behind the pace of the 2024 Dodgers. But the problem is that the 2023 Dodgers didn't have the expectations that this team has.
Yeah.
And, people are expecting, I think my preseason prediction was 104 wins. And I don't think they're going to make it to 104. It would be amazing if they did, but they would have to play some really good baseball from here out in order to do that.
Yeah, I think August, I remember last year's August, that's when Mookie Betts went on his insane run, to a lot of people overtook Acuna in the MVP conversation, but then had a slow September. I don't think they're going to get that type of production from their offense or pitching in August, but I still see them getting close to 100 wins at the end of this season. But at the end of the day, I don't really care. I just hope they get to October, and I hope they're healthy. I think that's the big thing, because the 2023 team was pretty healthy for probably a majority of the season, despite the season-ending injury to Lux at the beginning of the year. But the bench was pretty much healthy all season, and the starting rotation, they had their hiccups as well. But from July to the end of the season, pretty much the same. And this team right now, we're seeing kind of a quadruple A roster in terms of who's on it right now and batting and getting getting multiple at bats, where I'm thinking by the end of August we're going to start seeing the big bad Dodgers get back in a groove.
Right. Yeah, that's the sad thing about this 24 Dodgers is they never really
a lot of what ifs
got the whole machine going at the same time.
Yeah.
They've had good runs. They've had, nice, solid winning streaks. But the Dodgers that we were hoping for coming out of spring training just never materialized this year. Yeah. And it's been a struggle.
Yeah. And a team that, let's just get into before we, wrap up the episode. But, the Phillies, they're coming to town. It's 3-game set. In Los Angeles. I was there. I covered the team while they were in Philadelphia at Citizens Bank Park, and pretty much from the first pitch on.
Were we ahead ever in that series? I don't
remember it, and I was covering the game, and I was kind of just saying, well, what am I going to ask Dave Roberts, Bobby Miller after the game, after this embarrassment that was put on the field, and then for them to do it for 3 straight games was just disappointing, even as a fan, and then kind of being in a professional setting covering the team. It was not good. At the end of the day, they were embarrassed. The players were visibly frustrated, not only just from the grueling East Coast humidity, but just the fact that they were just outplayed. They were outpitched. They in the starting rotation in the bullpen, they were out hit. Situational hitting, they just didn't match the Phillies at all. But they're facing a Phillies team that has struggled mightily since the All-Star break, and I feel like with the way things are going right now, the Dodgers, despite playing a little bit, getting on a little bit of a hiccup, without Freddie Freeman, if they can get him back for this series, that's awesome. But I think the vibes are a little bit different right now. The Phillies are reeling. The Dodgers, they didn't have the best road trip, but they're returning home, which to a stadium that they've played at extremely well this season. And the starting pitching matchups, I think, is the biggest, indicator here, because, the Phillies aren't going to be feasting off Bobby Miller. They're not going to be feasting off the bottom barrels of our bullpen during a bullpen game. They're getting Tyler Glass now. They're getting Clayton Kershaw, and they're getting Gavin Stone, where I know Kershaw's had his up and downs. Gavin Stone hasn't been too solid, but Tyler Glass now was a big piece that was missing during that, that Phillies series. And I'm just interested to see, with everything I've said about the Phillies and everything we've talked about the Dodgers today, is this a big series, in terms of how big is this series? Like, that's pretty much the gist of it, because we already mentioned the only game and a half lead. I feel like it's a big confidence booster, and, we're post-trade deadline. David Vassegh was saying, early July when these two teams met, it wasn't an indicator of how they would look come October. I still don't think the Dodgers are at full strength, but the Phillies pretty much are. There's really virtually no injuries on their roster. So can we take away too much from this series coming up?
Well, I wouldn't take away too much, because we still won't have Mookie Betts, and I don't know if Freddie Freeman is going to be back at all. So those two guys are going to be crucial to our October plans. But certainly I'd like to see more competitive baseball. If we lose 2 out of 3, I wouldn't get that upset. If we get swept and embarrassed like we were before, it would be rough. But the interesting thing about the Phillies is, I mean, they're just playing bad. It's not like anybody's injured, like you said.
They're pretty much healthy. Their full roster is pretty much active.
I was looking at Bryce Harper, and he has just fallen off the cliff.
Yeah.
People, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we're talking about, should Bryce Harper be the MVP or should Shohei Ohtani be the MVP? I don't think we can have that conversation right now. Although Shohei has not been playing as well as he usually does, but he hasn't done a Bryce Harper, because I think Bryce Harper is hitting in the last 7 games like 0.73 or something.
Harper was in like an 0 for almost 20 stretch in the past handful of games.
Yeah, it was not good. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, Harper likes the big moment, and playing against the Los Angeles Dodgers is a big moment for him. So we'll see which Bryce Harper shows up. Yeah, his last 7 games, he's hitting 138 with a 276 slug, which is not good. Let's see, what did he do today? I don't know.
He did have a home run today.
Oh, he did.
So that kind of snapped a little bit of his, hitting, his hitless streak.
That would be the thing. He'd just break out of his funk right in time to play us.
Yeah. Well, Harper, originally in that first series that I covered, was that he was activated off the injured list and virtually didn't really impact the Phillies too much. And then now he comes into this series in Los Angeles just slumping, and the whole Phillies offense is. My big takeaway.
He was 3 for 4 today.
Oh, man,
6 total
sounds
bases.
like a good day. Looks like he's going to be off on a hot streak now.
Great.
That you brought it up.
Just great.
I think my big takeaway, if I'm going to take anything, is just the pitching. I think the Dodgers, their pitching is getting healthy. Yes, they're still missing Yamamoto. Flaherty's obviously not going to pitch this series, but I'm interested to see how Kershaw looks. I think Tyler Glass now getting a look at the Phillies is a big deal as well. And then Gavin Stone, he gets another crack at the Phillies lineup, which if it wasn't for a few defensive miscues, he probably would have had a better line against Philly at Citizens Bank Park.
Mm-hmm. He was undone by some defense.
Yeah, I don't think these two teams are separated by much, but I don't think you can, point the fingers at anybody if I point this out. But the Dodgers are just heavily injured. They don't have a majority of their starters that they hope to be playing meaningful games in October, and they will return. Mookie Betts will be back. Yamamoto, it sounds like he will be back. Max Muncy will be back. Freddie Freeman is definitely going to be back in the next couple of days.
You look at that Dodger infield, and it was like Gavin Biggio, Gavin Lux,
Gavin Lux is the
Nick
3-hole hitter
Ahmed,
right now.
and Kiki Hernandez. That is,
When Gavin Lux is your 3-hole hitter, it makes sense. It shows you the times that we are in right now.
right.
But I still think it's an exciting series, and then they're more than likely, I think the way things are going to line up, they're going to get another look at this Pirates team that has excellent pitching, and they're more than likely going to see Paul Skeens again.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how that
pitched
starts.
today. So I guess that would line him up to pitch at some point during.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe he will pitch this series coming up after the Phillies series. So, but yeah, I feel like the Dodgers have a lot coming up. August, they're going to have a lot of players return. Mookie Betts, it sounds like it's going to be the first big impact player return. Max Muncy soon after that. And then hopefully Yamamoto, he threw a bullpen session, I believe, on Friday or Saturday. So hopefully he can start to get built up as a starter as well. And we can start seeing a nice, healthy Dodgers baseball team roll.
Things
into
are trending.
October.
Things are trending in the right direction. We just need to sort of keep our powder dry and not attack a team that's down. And to be honest, since the All-Star break, they still have a winning record.
Yeah.
It was not the best of road trips, but 3-5 is not horrible.
Yeah.
I think what was sticking in people's craw and understandable is that 2 of those games that we lost, 2 of those 5 games were very winnable games.
Winnable, yep.
And that's what drives people crazy is when you lose games that you should win. If you lose, like the first game in Oakland. I mean, Ohtani hit a home run in the 9th, but we were never really in that game, right?
Yeah, they were pretty much out of that game all the game until that 9th inning.
Yeah, and he hit a home run off of one of their minus relievers, so it wasn't like the biggest shock in the world that we lost that game. But losing that game when we had a 5-0 lead, that's the ones that hurt, right? Because it's like 3 times in July we lost a 5-run lead, and that just should not happen.
Can't happen.
Major League Baseball.
Yeah. So I think the Dodgers are returning home at a perfect time. They're going to get some players back. Freddie Freeman's going to be the big one. Thankfully, everything with his family is going great with Max. So everything's trending in the right direction. I think the road trip, while it wasn't the best, taking a series in Oakland and then returning home to face a Phillies team that's reeling, I think they just need to take advantage of that. But yeah, so I'm excited for these next weeks of games, and I'm excited for a lot of these players.
Yeah, if we can get like a 4-2 homestand, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I'll definitely say I would even be happy if they just split it 3-3. You're facing a lot of good pitching in the Phillies and the Pirates. You're getting some offensive contributions. Returning, Freddie Freeman being the big one. But yeah, like I said, I'll just be happy if they just split it 3-3. I would definitely love to see that.
I mean, when's the last time Freddie Freeman has spent a week away from baseball in the middle of the season, right?
It's probably unheard of.
Probably never, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to need a few strokes before he's back on track. So yeah, we shouldn't give him a little rope before we start to hang him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, but yeah, that'll about do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast, the weekly rewind. Be sure to subscribe and follow the channel. We will definitely have content this upcoming week when we cover games. Be sure to visit DodgerBeat.com because Steve and I are constantly posting articles, whether
Every
that's
day.
Dodger notes, recap articles, or just our thoughts and opinions. It's definitely going to be a big week in writing because, we got a very big series with the Phillies right now, so we're going to see some answers, some questions answered from this series in terms of who's pitching and all that. So, Steve, any closing thoughts before we end the show?
Well, it would be nice if we could at least get into a position where we would have a tiebreaker with the Phillies, but the best we can hope for is a split, right? Because we lost 3 in Philly, so So fingers are crossed. Hopefully we can. Let's at least play competitive baseball this week because that Philly series was probably the worst series
Of
that
the
they
year,
had
probably.
all year.
Yeah.
It was
So,
just
I'll definitely agree with you on that. I just hope to see competitive baseball this week. Like I said, I'd be happy with a 3-3 split on this homestand. I would definitely like to see the Dodgers, sweep the Phillies and just even up the season series right there. We sweep them, at our home. They sweep us, at their home. So I guess we'll call it even there. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. Be sure to follow the page, and we'll catch you on the next one.
This episode has been brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here.